I believe we're live now. I'm not positive.
I'm back.
Are we going? I think we're live now. I'm not positive.
Okay.
So welcome everyone to our presentation on the Year of Publishing Women. My name is Benjamin Gorman, and I'm going to just kind of MC, but I'm going to walk everyone through introductions, and then we are going to share about this exciting thing that happened to our publishing company, Not a Pipe Publishing, back in 2018. So, LeeAnn, you want to share your screen, and then I will. LeeAnn is our tech whiz and is doing 5 things at a time here. So
don't set it up too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, I'm working on it. And let's see.
So unfortunately, you are seeing 4 of us rather than 5. Mikko Azul is not able to make it today, but we are still going to show you a little slide about her, and so that you can check out her fantastic novel. You'll want to get in on that because the sequel is going to be coming out this next year. She writes epic high fantasy, and it takes many, many years for all of that work to come together into these fantastic books. So you'll want to check out Mikko's work as well. One of the great things about your book flow is you're getting to meet these authors and decide, hey, this is somebody I'd like to be a super fan of. So please consider becoming a super fan of Mikko, even though she had some family issues and not able to make it today.
Okay. And I apologize for not yet sharing the screen. I'm having my own technical difficulties. But if you want to, Ben, if you just want to kind of start talking a little bit about.
Oh, and here everyone. It is coming up, I think. There we go.
Okay, what do you see?
Now we're seeing.
Okay.
One of your
monitors. That's better.
Yes, we're getting there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I don't know if you can switch monitors. So,
I'm getting there.
Yeah. LeeAnn is amazing. So Mikko is aging and disability case manager. She's a former U.S. Marine. She's a mom. She's a teacher. She's a self-professed nerd. She is a fantasy author, and she's into scuba, rock climbing, and hiking. And so you'll see an image of her up there when on Portland Today. She lives in the Seattle area, but she's done some media down our way. And after that, I'll turn it over to LeeAnn to introduce herself.
Okay. So very quickly, can you all see Mikko's screen?
Yes, there we go.
Okay, excellent. So just to give you a moment to catch up on Mikko, since she's not here. And then I'll move to me. So I'm LeeAnn McLennan, and my day job is I'm a systems engineer. The person behind the scenes who keeps computers running so that you can do whatever you need to do. So, and I'm a fantasy writer. I have a trilogy out, Supernormal Legacy, and I'm sorry for the echo. And I'm also in Strongly Worded Women. And when I'm not writing or working in normal times, I'm always cooking, but in normal times I'm doing hiking, and I love to kickbox, and I believe in story as a reflection of life. So that is me. And now we'll talk about Sang.
Hi, my name is Sang Kromah. I'm a young adult urban fantasy author. I'm a social media specialist for Montgomery County government. Former expatriate. I lived in Liberia for about 5 or 6 years. An advocate for the empowerment of girls. I started an organization called Project Girls Fire, and I believe that magic can be found in the mundane, so I write about it.
Nice. Okay.
Hi, I'm next, Heather Ransom. I am a middle school teacher, a pizza pub and cigar shop owner, a science fiction author, a wife, a mom, and probably, and most importantly, as an author, I'm a believer in the magic of an incredible story. Next is Ben.
Okay, hold on.
Right.
There you go. Oops.
And I believe you're working on a screenplay right now, correct, Heather?
Yes, that's the next venture, learning how to write screenplays.
I am excited about that one as well. My name is Benjamin Gorman. I'm a high school teacher, high school English. I teach 9th grade and 12th grade. but not 10th and 11th.
Sorry.
It's just the way it works. And I'm an author, and there are my books there. And I'm the co-publisher of Not a Pipe Publishing. We have recently promoted another publisher to the position of co-publisher, Vivica Sheeran, and she is fantastic. So that's been an exciting change for the company. I'm a dad, I'm a political activist, and I'm a nerd. So I do a lot of political activism work, and when I'm not doing that, I'm relaxing by geeking out.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to tell you a story of our year in publishing women.
And, of course, because we're writers, we are going to tell this in parts.
So the story begins on the third day of the Jaipur Literature Festival back in 2011. So we're going way back. The authors Martin Amis, Jay McKerney, Hunot Diaz, and Richard Ford were in a lively debate over the crisis in American fiction. And if I had been sitting there and I'd been watching that, I would have said, oh, this is a really lively, interesting discussion about, is the novel dead? And that probably is where I would have stopped.
Hold on. Is it supposed to be me? I'm sorry. I can't see my notes.
That's one more slide, then it's saying.
Okay.
I did 2 slides in a row. Sorry.
Okay.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next slide there.
Sorry.
Okay. Author Camilla Shamsi was in the audience that day. She's the brilliant British Pakistani author of Home Fire and the winner of the 2018 Women's Prize for Fiction. She noticed something else. She noticed Martin Amis, Jay McKinney, Junot Diaz, Richard Ford, Norman Mailer, Sal Bellow, John Updike, Ernest Hemingway, John Faulkner, Truman Capote.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to work with 3 screens here. Okay.
Skip forward 2 slides, folks will see that it just jumps out at you. We've highlighted the names, and I think this will jump out at the audience. They will realize, something is wrong here.
Okay. Oop. Okay.
So those of you who are probably not cishet white men recognize what's wrong with this picture.
Okay. Just so you know, I can't see the notes, so if someone could read whatever.
Oh, sure. So,
yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. So Shamsi wrote, I was in the audience, and halfway through the discussion, I leaned over to the person sitting next to me and said, clearly, the crisis in American fiction is not that that there are no women in it. It's not just that there weren't any women on the stage. In the entire discussion, which lasted nearly an hour, there was no mention of Toni Morrison, Marilyn Robinson, Annie Proulx, Ann Tyler, Donna Tartt, Jaime Lahiri, or any other contemporary female writer. A single reference to Eudora Welty was the only acknowledgement that women in the United States had ever written anything to do with the world of letters.
Shamsi said, I think of this panel when reading yet another article or survey about the gender imbalance that exists in publishing houses in terms of reviews, top positions in publishing houses, literary prizes, etc. The issue can't, of course, be broken down into a story of fair-minded women versus bigoted men. Like any effective system of power, and patriarchy is, over time and space, the most effective system of power, the means of keeping the power structure intact is complex.
So I saw an article about this in the Guardian newspaper, And she created this challenge, and she recognized that this was a provocation. That's what she called it. She acknowledged this was not really probably going to happen. But she said, I'm challenging the publishing industry to only publish women in the year of 2018. And she knew that no publishing company is going to say, sorry, Stephen King, we're going to leave millions of dollars on the table because we, are going to postpone your book launch by a year because of this challenge. But she wanted to challenge the industry in that way. Now, what she was recognizing is that this is institutional bias. This is not conscious animus. So what is happening, what is creating this phenomena is you've got an industry where a lot of publishers, authors, the people involved are feeling very pressured. They're on the margins. They're trying to figure out what is going to be successful next year. And what they do when they do that is they look back into the past and they say, well, what worked last year? And unfortunately, the people last year were looking back to the year before that. And the people last year were looking forward to the year before that. And if you go all the way back, everybody ends up saying, I guess we're only going to publish Shakespeare and Homer. That's what was successful, rather than what will be successful in the future. And so that is what creates this system. And the novelist Nicola Griffith, who's a Northwest native herself, she's a Seattleite, says, when women win literary awards for fiction, it's usually for writing from a male perspective and or about men. The more prestigious the award, the more likely the subject of the narrative will be male. And so that was part of the motivation for Shamsi's challenge, was that if all the books were written by women in a year, then all the prizes, all the promotion, all the attention, all the institutional power would be in promoting women's work for a year. And here's some evidence of that. This next slide.
Okay, here are the Pulitzer Prizes for 2000 to 2015. The majority of winners were male authors writing about male protagonists.
And then the next one you'll see is the Man Booker Prize, which is the most prestigious in the UK. And it's even more heavily skewed to male authors writing about men.
And then here's the National Book Award as well.
Still seeing that same bias there. Now, here's the Hugo. So this is the most prestigious for science fiction. Genre literature has historically been less respected. And you can see that our graph is starting to shift more toward women writers and female protagonists. It's still skewed toward men, but as the prestige goes down, more women start to win the awards and are accepted. So there's an inverse relationship between prestige and the prizes that those the prizes which skew towards male authors. That's that next one is the Hugo.
Okay.
Okay, and here's the Newbery Medal. This is the most prestigious award for children's fiction. Now we finally get close to parity between women and men writing about female and male protagonists.
However, it's hard to, and this is from Nicola Griffith, who compiled all this data, did this wonderful deep dive into this. She says, it's hard to escape the conclusion that when it comes to literary prizes, the more prestigious, influential, and financially remunerative, I always struggle with that word, remunerative the award, the less likely the winner is to write about grown women. Either this means that women writers are self-censoring, or those who judge literary worthiness find women frightening, distasteful, or boring. Certainly the results argue for women's perspectives being considered uninteresting or unworthy. Women seem to have literary cooties. And it's not just prizes. This goes to reviews as well. There was a study by VIDA, an organization that studies women in literary arts, and they found that one of the worst culprits was found to be the London Review of Books, which featured 527 male authors on their pages in 2014 compared to just 151, so 527 to 151. It also saw a rare drop in book reviews written by women from the year before. The New York Review of Books displayed a similar imbalance, 677 men to 242 women. The New York Times, 909 to 792. The Nation's male-female split was 469 to 193. And at Harper's, fewer than half the authors reviewed were women.
So, Shamsi concluded, at this point, I'm going to assume that the only people who really doubt that there is a gender bias going on here are those who stick with the idea that men are better writers and better critics, and that when men recommend books by men, it is fair literary judgment, while when women recommend books by women, it is either a political position or woolly feminine judgment. To those people, I have nothing to say except go away and read Toni Morrison.
Right?
So now we'd like to ask you to reflect on this. If there's someone next to you, turn to the person next to you, or just to yourself. Think about these things. Was this information a surprise? How do these facts make you feel?
And feel free to put that in the chat. We'd love to see some of your responses. How did you feel learning some of the data about the gender bias? And I apologize about what this is doing to your blood pressure.
Oh.
We'll give folks a second to put your feelings about that in the chat. Yeah, go away and read Toni Morrison.
Okay.
So
let me know when I should keep going.
Now I'm going to make it worse because this is where it gets even more frustrating. Among avid readers surveyed by the AP, the typical woman reads 9 books in a year compared to only 5 for men. Women read more than men in all categories except for history and biography. When it comes to fiction, the gender gap is at its widest. Men account for only 20% of the fiction market, according to surveys. So when you see all of this institutional pressure going towards male authors, recognize that 80% of the consumers of fiction are women. Isn't that even more frustrating? And again, we want to reiterate, this is not individual animus. The people involved don't sit around, stroking their long goatees and saying we hate women. This is about people just looking back into the past and always saying, what is it that we need to do? And so there's this kind of antipathy that a lot of people have toward the idea of affirmative action. And what we need to recognize is there is affirmative action right now. It's affirmative action towards men. And what we need is an equal counterbalance of affirmative action, people making active choices to promote women's work, if we're going to have a countervailing pressure against what is essentially affirmative action toward male authors.
Yeah, and so here's the proposed solution. And I can finally see my notes, by the way.
Yay!
Yay! So I can finally speak. So Shamsi's solution, I would argue that it is time for everyone, male and female, to sign up to a concerted campaign to redress the inequality. Last year, a number of readers, critics, and at least one literary journal, The Critical Flame, signed up to a year of reading women. For The Critical Flame, it was female writers and writers of color. Why not take it a step further? Why not have a year of publishing women in 2018, the centenary, I have no idea if I said that right, of women over the age of 30 getting the vote in the UK? Seems appropriate. Of course, there'll be many details to work out, but the basic premise of my provocation is that none of the new titles published in that year should be written by men. Okay, next slide.
And it looks the same, but this one's saying.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
This is in 2015, she had no idea about the Me Too movement, a U.S. presidential candidate caught on tape bragging about committing sexual assault, the women's marches around the world. Shamsi's choice of 2018 seemed almost random back then, but from our perspective, it seems prescient now.
And that brings us to Not a Pipe Publishing's part in this story.
So I came across this article in The Guardian, and I decided this is important to me. I'm a feminist. This is something that I could do something about. Now, we've had a bit of a debate about this internally, and I think it's important to explain a little bit about what we mean by feminism. That being said, I recognize the irony of a man explaining feminism to a group of women. So I'm going to take a back seat.
Okay.
So Ben's story doesn't start with a man. It starts with a woman and a man who are both feminists, who raised a feminist.
And now he's raising a feminist. So briefly, we'll explain what we mean by feminists.
To understand what feminism is, it's best to go back through the waves. Feminism is a civil rights movement that makes social progress, then gets hit with a backslash from people who are uncomfortable with social change, then pushes forward further into the next generation. The first wave goes all the way back to Mary Wollstonecraft at the end of the 1700s. At that point, it mostly concerned itself with voting rights and property rights.
And so at that point, the central question it asked is, why can't women have equal rights? So if you think that women and men should have equal rights, you are a feminist.
That first wave ran into a backlash after World War II when men came home from war and men and women wanted men to have access to jobs. So they put a lot of pressure on women to feel compelled to return to the home. And note, it is a sad fact that it's often women who can take the lead in pushing back against feminism too. But the next generation of children had seen their mothers working during the war, and many had seen their mothers felt more happy and fulfilled, and they wanted to have those options. Those children then led the second wave. This wave, from the 60s to the 80s, went beyond voting and concerned itself with sexuality, family, the workplace, reproductive rights, de facto inequalities, and official legal inequalities. Second wave feminism also drew attention to the issues of domestic violence and marital rape, and changes in custody laws and divorce law.
So its central question was, why can't women have equal opportunities? If you believe that women and men should have equal opportunities, you are a feminist.
There was another backlash in the 80s. You may have heard the term mommy wars. Some of the second wave feminists were painted, fairly or unfairly, as being anti-motherhood. Feminists were blamed for a lot of the public health consequences of the sexual revolution. Believing in equal rights and opportunities became unfashionable. The third wave started in the 90s as a product of riot girl feminist punk subculture in Olympia, Washington in the early 1990s, and Anita Hill's televised testimony in 1991 to an all-male, all-white Senate I can never say this word, Judiciary Committee that Clarence Thomas, nominated for the Supreme Court of the United States, has sexually harassed her. Interesting oh God, I hate this part, but it has to be said. Interesting historical note that a lot of people aren't aware of. There were a lot of other victims who were willing to come forward and testify about their allegations of Clarence Thomas's harassment of them. But the chair of the committee, Joe Biden, decided one witness was enough. Because she was the only one, Anita Hill was treated horribly. I know history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but that sounds mighty familiar to anyone who followed the Kavanaugh hearings, doesn't it?
The questions third wave feminism hinges on are more complex. It asks, why do women and men have to accept traditional male definitions of rights and opportunities? And since sexism, racism, classism, and other forms of bigotry interact, and since they are bad for all of us, how can we work together to make a better system? If you believe we should break out of the traditional gender roles we assign people based on sex, and if you believe people fighting sexism, racism, and classism should work together to create a more just society, you're a third wave or intersectional feminist.
Now, it is too early to tell for sure, but there are some scholars who think we're actually experiencing a fourth wave. It focuses on justice for women, sexual harassment and violence, especially online. As Prudence Chamberlain writes, this one is based on incredulity that certain attitudes can still exist.
Yeah.
So the central question of fourth wave is,
Why
the fuck is anyone still opposed to equal rights and opportunities for women?
Right?
Right. Come on, people.
So, as a cis straight white male who's an intersectional feminist, I have to ask myself, what can I do about this? So I go around and I do trainings for educators through the Oregon Education Association about how to be an ally to students. And I break down being an ally, if you're a person of privilege, into 4 steps. Shut up, listen, which is not the same as shutting up. First shut up, then listen, then learn, and then signal boost. And that's what the year of publishing was all about, was the signal boosting. I needed to not publish anything of mine or anything by any other male author. I needed to read more submissions by women. So first I needed to shut up, just say I'm not going to publish male authors. Then I needed to read more. That's that listening. Then I needed to learn from women about what were their struggles to get published, what they had to offer, which were the voices that needed to be promoted. And then I needed to signal boost, to use my unearned authority as a man to call people's attention to these incredible women writers. So I can do this because I had a little publishing company. And so it was very little. I started the company back in 2013 with 1 book. Then decided, okay, I've got a second book coming out. I should kind of formalize this. So I started this small press. And it was right at the time when I was thinking I need to start going out and finding other authors to work with me in this company, that it was right around the time Corporate High School came out that Camilla Chomsky made her provocation.
The announcement of their commitment to take on the challenge got some local attention. They were interviewed by Jenica Valamore for a piece on KPTV, for example. And that ended up being a big deal because one of the people who saw the report was Mikko, a very talented fantasy author who sadly is not with us today. And her commitment, their commitment inclined her to reach out to them and pitch her wonderful novel, The Staff of Fire and Bone.
Okay, so in 2017, we released 4 novels. So this is still 2017, not the year of publishing women. And note the genders of the authors. And for the sake of transparency, we're going to graph this out just the way we did for everybody else. So you'll see, we did not start off in a great place. Yeah, not great, right? So predominantly men writing about men. And then 2018 comes about.
And then we hit the year of publishing women. We kicked it off in January with an epic high fantasy novel, The Staff of Fire and Bone by Mikko Azul.
Then in February, we released 2 novels. The first in LeeAnn McLennan's YA superhero trilogy, The Supernormal Legacy, Book 1, Dormant, which, by the way, is amazing.
Oh, thank you. And then the second, the YA contemporary fantasy Shadow Girl by folklorist Kate Redisau. Also a wonderful series.
Yeah.
And then in March, we released Jinn by Kromah, contemporary YA romance inspired by the Liberian folklore that Sang learned as a child, and a fantastic book.
and also a really good reference for Buffy the Vampire Slayers.
Yes, if you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you'll feel these little like clues hidden in there that are very cool.
Yeah, really fun.
Then in April, we released Survivors Club by M.K. Martin, and it's a sci-fi apocalyptic thriller, and she's an ex-Army intelligence officer, and it's about preventing a pandemic, so it feels even more salient now.
Ooh, yay.
And then in May, we released Daughter of Magic by Karen Eisenbrink. Signing Karen has been quite a gift for us because not only is this a great YA fantasy novel, but because we earned her trust. We later went on to publish her other YA series, The Gospel According to Saint Rage, and then the sequel to Daughter of Magic, and then the sequel to Saint Rage called Barbara and the Rage Brigade. Been a joke that we should have announced we had followed the year of publishing women with the year of publishing Karen.
Then in July, we released the second book in LeeAnn's trilogy. So the Supernormal Legacy, Book 2, Root. And that was our first sequel. And that cover, I just love that cover so much.
It's my favorite cover, too. It's so beautiful.
Then in September, we released the sequel to Heather's Going Green, Greener. And so Heather was the first author that Not a Pie Publishing signed. So I'm so excited that she's chosen to stick around with Not a Pie Publishing through the whole trilogy, which is amazing.
Okay, so as at the end of 2018, this is where we were. Check out the side-by-side. So a lovely graph to look at. Looking a little better. Okay, and as you can see, in 1 year, we flipped the script. This next year, which was 2019, we did go back to publishing men and women. In fact, one of the novels we published was one of Ben's. It's really good. We published more women than men in 2019. 5 novels by women and 2 by men. And in 2020 so far, we've published 5 books by women and 4 by men. And we expect that to continue for the foreseeable future because of the talent we've attracted through this initiative.
So also over the course of the year, in an effort to promote even more women authors' voices, we also published a short story each month on our website. And then at the end of the year, those were collected by our editor, Sydney Culpepper, and compiled into an anthology. And Sydney did all the hard work on this anthology. I didn't choose the stories. I felt it was very important that we didn't have a man deciding on the voices of women. So Sydney made all the selections. She did a wonderful job. And there's that anthology that she created.
It's very cool. Okay. And this is what our statistics would look like if we include all the writers in the anthology as well. So you can see the highlighted by women about women.
Proud of that.
Yeah, you should be. So
things then just kind of went nuts. So we were very lucky when it came to press. At the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association conference, Heather ran into a reporter named Jen Director Knudsen, and she wrote this fabulous piece about the year of publishing women for the Oregonian, and then it just went viral. Within days, the story had been picked up by Bustle. Well, that was blowing up. 4 of our authors were interviewed on OPB's Think Out Loud. And it just got crazier from there. So the story then was picked up by the Times of India, which has 1 million readers a day. It was picked up by newspapers in Spain, a literary journal in Italy. I do not read Italian, but it seemed flattering. So all this press was drawing on Ms. Knudsen's original article. So it was really positive coverage.
of course, not all the reaction could be positive. Some of the responses in the comments sections were critical of the efforts. We pushed back and we used sexist criticisms to bring more attention to the year of publishing women by writing about them on our blog and through our social media channels.
Basically what happened was when people would say, this is terrible, you shouldn't be doing this, this is the worst thing ever. I would say, I dare you to try and write a book as good as the books written by these women. And if you want to, then try and sue us for discriminating against you because you've written a better book, we can talk about that. And they would then vanish because nobody's going to write a book better than these women wrote it that year.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, these are our ebook sales for the lifetime of the company up through the year of publishing women. You can see it dramatically improved our sales.
And here's the next one is just, these are just kind of snapshots, but I just want you to see the arc here. So here is our print sales. So you can see dramatic increase as a consequence of this initiative. So it was very effective in that way.
Diversifying by gender isn't enough.
Is that me? Okay.
Yeah.
Not a Fight Publishing believes in intersectionality. We recognize that we need to promote marginalized voices of all kinds. So we've been actively working to publish more authors of color, like Lydia K. Valentine and Zach Dye, and more LGBTQ authors like Michaela Thorne and Claudine Griggs.
And signal boosting in and of itself isn't enough. I've learned since then that the main issue which causes the disparities in publishing industry stem from inequities of power. And I was in a somewhat unique position to do something about that too, because Not a Pipe had this fantastic editor who'd been working with us for years. So I reached out to Vivica and offered to promote her to co-publisher and co-owner.
And as you can imagine, we're very excited to see where Not a Pipe goes next under this new leadership team.
Yeah.
So thank you for having us and for supporting authors and small presses.
And at this time, we would love to field some questions if there's any questions that have come in through the chat box.
Okay. And I will unshare.
And so the first question is, we're all speaking like we participated in this as a group marketing effort. So what were some of the collective efforts that we put in place? So who wants to tackle that one first?
I'll take a shot at it. I think that one of the really incredible things about working with Ben and Vivica in Not a Pipe Publishing is that all of the authors are encouraged to read each other's works. And so we have all read each other's books and our stories, and we are able to talk about those and help, put all of those out there together. So it's really great. I write science fiction. But if someone goes, oh, science fiction isn't really my thing, I can say, oh, my word, I have this fantastic fantasy novel that you should read. Or I have, there's a sports novel that you should read. Or there's this action adventure, this exciting mystery. So we can share each other's work. And I think that becomes incredibly important that all of the authors are there supporting each other. So through all of our social media and anytime that we go out and present and bookstores or online or wherever it might be, we're always talking about each other's books and what's available out there. So that's my take on it. It's a neat, really fun, engaging way to all be involved together in the publishing company.
Yeah. And I would tack on to that the whole sense of togetherness and family has been something that's made this, I think, a more special experience than with other publishing companies that I've been with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly what Elizabeth says. Like, we tried to create a family.
Yeah. It's been really good. Ooh.
So I don't know that I had come across the Bechdel test, that idea in 2015. Maybe that was before she wrote about that. I'm not sure when that came out. Somebody will have to say. But I heard about it at the Willamette Writers Conference, which I highly recommend if folks are in the Portland area. Willamette Writers Conference is just a cool opportunity. And so the Bechdel test is something that I now very much think about as I am reading. And I've even said sometimes two women authors. You've got a book where you don't have women talking about things that other than men. And so, even women authors sometimes have been so conditioned by our culture that their own works aren't passing the Bechdel test. So encouraging, the other thing that I worry a lot about as I'm reading a book is agency. Are the female characters the ones making the choices for themselves? Are they driving the choices, or are they waiting unconscious for the prince to come kiss them? And that's deeply, deeply problematic, right? Yay, the prince comes along and commits sexual assault, and it's a happy ending Disney movie, right? So, really being thoughtful about who is choosing for her. Is she making these choices herself?
Before I pitched Jen to Not a Pipe, a literary agent actually told me who saves her in the story. I'm like, she saved herself.
Right. Well, I hope that people watching, like that feeling you had where you went, she saves herself. I hope everyone watching goes, I'm now going to go out and get a copy of Jin because she saves herself.
She's wonderful.
So key. She makes the choices. And I love that about that book. Like, she's the one constantly, discovering things and trying to solve this mystery for herself. There's nobody coming in saying, here's how it all works. She's got to make those choices. And in Supernormal Legacy and Greener as well, the characters are saying, what do I need to do next? And and even if they're making mistakes, they're making these, they're learning these things. And it's not because a male character is coming in saying, this is what you ought to do.
Right.
I love the passion here. Saying, were you going to say something more? Or?
No.
Okay, good. I love not having to have my female characters saved, or even my male characters. It's so freeing to just write in a way what feels like the real world.
Right.
So I love that. It's the best. So
I think too, as a teacher, I teach middle school, so I'm with 12 to 14-year-olds all day long, and then get to continue on and watch their lives as they go into high school. And I think that Not a Pipe stories that they've chosen to publish, that have been chosen, that we all back up and share about, those stories are incredibly relatable to teens and young adults, and even adults today who look back and say, yes, I was in that position, or, oh, I have a friend who was in that position, or, and you find yourself as you're reading the stories relating to the characters that are there and rooting for those characters and investing in those characters to move forward and make good choices. And I think that's really important for young adults today, for teens, and actually for all of us, to stop and think about the choices that we're making and the impact those choices will have in our future, and not just making those choices for today. But I think that a lot of Not a Pipe's books do that. They encourage people to think about not just right now, but to think about forward.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So our next question is, how are we changing the company to attract authors of color and LGBTQIA authors? And the big change is, it should not just be me going out and deciding this author of color is worthy, this author of color is worthy, or that maintains the power dynamic that is so unhealthy. And so now a lot of our submissions are coming. Our submissions have always been reviewed by a group, not just by me. But now the submissions editor who has the authority is the co-publisher. And so Vivica can say, this one needs to be published. This book is fantastic. And so that has been, she runs it by me. She's like, what do you think? And we work together as a team. But having a person of color in power, I think is really important in an organization. And we have this tendency to say, well, I know there was a big thing right now where the Fortune 500 companies are representing that they have a person of color on the board. Well, one person on the board is not the same as the CEO. Like, we need to have people of color making those decisions at the top. And that is, I think, really important. So that's one of the ways that we're kind of moving forward, is to make sure that the Vivica is driving a lot of those decisions about what gets published.
Yeah.
I wish she could have been here today. Yeah, it would have been cool for everybody to get to hear from her. She's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, she is.
So Evan asks, did the authors know in advance about the Year of Publishing Women? And we were such a little baby company at the time that it was, I had publicized it in 2015. And so some knew about it. But I then did have to go to a couple of our male authors and say, your book's not going to come out in 2018. It's not going to come out until 2019. As that, sorry, this is a commitment we've made. And they were both really cool about it. There was no pushback. There was no, but I did have one of the male authors saying, well, what do you think if we just snuck it in like December, which would be real late in the publishing kind of calendar anyway. And I was like, no, we've made this commitment. So, I think that everybody was supportive of it. But yeah, the women knew in advance, and a couple of the men had to kind of find out your book's going to be pushed back, your sequel. Are submissions blind? Not really, no. So we do kind of a traditional, like, send a query letter, and so whatever somebody shares in that query, that's what we know. And so they're not fully blind in that way. Instead, that's a really interesting question. Would we be better off if we didn't know the identity, or are we better off with that kind of affirmative action mentality in mind, so that we're saying we do know what this person has chosen to share about their identity, and it's important to us. We want to be representing more women. We want to be representing more folks who are LGBTQ. And some of that we see in the stories themselves. Michaela Thorne's novel, for example, which is fantastic, Tooth and Claw. The protagonist and her girlfriend are, werewolves, but they're in a race at the beginning. We find out that she has a girlfriend, like, on page 1. And so that was one of the things where right away I was like, this is and it's normalized. Like, that's not like, oh, that's weird. The fact that they're werewolves and the fact that that's just part of this universe. That's totally fine. And I think that's good for young adults to be reading, to just, this is okay. I missed that next one, Elizabeth. That one popped up fast. Yeah,
just backing up.
Yeah, I think that idea of we've got to be conscious of what it is we're fighting against, and so that is tricky though. Because I know that many corporations have gone to resumes that have the names removed, and they found that you can have some really positive impact, taking away bias. If somebody, if the person who's doing the hiring is not going, I don't know why, but for some reason, when I read this guy's resume, Chad reminds me of somebody who lived on my dorm in college. Like, the person's not even aware that they're, choosing in a biased way. And so there is value to that. But I think that once you've made the decision to say we are consciously challenging that, then having that information is helpful.
Well, and I will say, having been involved with this publishing company and having been involved in the Year of Publishing Women and just, all the positive experiences that came from this, it's making me a braver writer. So my next piece, I'm pushing myself and my understanding of the world and how I'm writing it. Right. And hopefully that will be reflected. And that's been such a good experience to come out of this on a personal level.
That makes me so happy. I love hearing that, because that's what we should do, right? We're this community that's encouraging each other to be brave. So that's wonderful.
Thank you. Cool.
So next up, folks, there's going to be one on how do Americans learn to be Americans with Kathleen Flanagan. I highly encourage you to check that one out. I'm excited about that one myself. And I want to thank Yola Boca Flood for having us. And everybody else, I'll let you sign off.
All right.
I've talked too much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.